Hello and welcome to another episode of the Parenting Teens podcast. And hopefully this week you're going to have a better quality of sound because I've been playing around with my microphone and it now looks like I'm being one of those YouTubers who has to have the microphone just here. But I've discovered that is actually very relevant. So here goes. I'd been in denial about having problems with my sound and dealing with them and finding out what the cause was. And that is going to be the topic of today's podcast episode about parenting teens, is about being in denial. And when we actually accept that we have an issue and we look for the problem or acknowledge the problem and we find the root cause of the problem, we can come up with solutions. And with solutions, we have better results and a happier outcome. So I am genuinely hoping that today's outcome is this is a beautifully clear recording as far as my voice will allow. And this is going to be the new feature on every podcast. So welcome to my microphone. I normally have it somewhere like just sitting in the corner or off screen, but it's now going to be right here. So that's explaining why this is my new co-host and I have to learn to love the microphone. And it's not that I've hated it. I do love it. But loving it didn't necessarily mean I wanted to address the problems going on. And I was going, oh, I'm not a sound engineer. I'm not a technician. I don't know anything about all the audio quality. And so I was kind of in denial about dealing with it. And that is very relevant. This is coming perfectly with the topic I wanted to talk about today, about being in denial. And that's massively important to mental health and emotional well-being too. And that's a good point. There's another topic for next week. I want to talk about the difference between mental health and emotional well-being, emotional health. But let's talk about denial. So as parents, we see our teenagers so often, and young adults, children, all of them, and partners, even ourselves, we see ourselves and them going through these phases of, we see they have a problem. And we try to say to them, we can see where you're stuck, where you have a problem. Here's the solutions we offer. And they go into denial. I haven't got a problem. I'm fine. I'm doing it the way I want to do it. It's just a classic that teenagers go into denial and keep going in the route that they think is the right direction. Now, last week, I did an episode all about being lost. And if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend watching the one about being lost, because that is super relevant to today's being in denial. That part where somebody is lost and they go, no, that's fine. I'm going the right way. I know where I'm heading. But you can see they're going the wrong way. And no matter how much you try to tell them they're going the wrong way, they are damned well convinced that they are going the way they should be going. And they're getting more and more lost and don't listen to us. And that is what we call being in denial. So how can we begin to address denial? And how can we recognize it in ourselves as parents too? And I'm aware I'm fidgeting my glasses a lot today. It's very warm and they just keep sliding down my nose. So how can we address this denial? So first of all, as parents, we see them making choices that are not serving them to their best ability. And sometimes actually that's okay, because the lessons they learn will stick with them. And we talk about learning things the hard way. And there are definitely some areas where they need to do that. Like, can they pour a pint of liquid into a half-pint cup? Sometimes, we watching them do this as children. They're trying to pour too much liquid into a smaller vessel. It's not going to happen. It's going to spill. But you know what? That's called experimenting. And when we can constructively and creatively experiment and allow them to experiment, that is learning. So long as they are safe. However, if you see your child walking towards the edge of a cliff or a busy road with lots of traffic on it, do we let them experiment with that? Absolutely not. And we have to find a way to stop them for safety's sake. So those are the two extremes. On the one hand is creative experimentation, and on the other end of the extreme is this absolute safety issue about keeping them alive. And when we realize that those are the two extremes of the potential here, everything else is kind of gradient in the middle. Where do we fit this? All right. Now, if you see your child putting their shoes on in the morning and they've got two different shoes on, well, that might not be creative experiment, but it's also not life-threatening either. But the question I have for you is, within that scale of things, how do you react to them doing that? Or how do you tell them or inform them that they have put two different shoes on, even though they both might be black or white or whatever? How do you say to them, oh, you've got the wrong shoes on? Did you know you've got two different shoes on? Or do you say to them, oh, you can't go out the house like that, you've got two different shoes on? And kind of go into that more urgent, controlling end of it rather than the creative side. You know, when we approach it of a point of, wow, are you actually hoping to go to school with those two shoes on? What do you think it will feel like to wear two different shoes? And I think if we say, what do you think other people will say? They're going to go into judging mode. What would other people say? Oh, yes, very self-conscious mode. But if we were to say something like, how do you think you would feel going to school with two different shoes? Or what do you think is going to happen, you know, at playtime? Or, you know, why do you think it would be creative? And it kind of inspires the conversation, but it will still have them making a different choice most of the time. Some children may decide to go to school with two different shoes on and go, do you know what? I actually love this. Does it matter? In your mind, it might, but what about in their mind? And so this is not specific answers. It's not a definite, but I'm hoping you see what I'm saying is that it's the narrative that we choose to take to it that teaches them how to react to it. So it's one thing to say, you have two different shoes on, and they go, oh, yeah. It's another one to say, well, what do you think other people will think if you wear two different shoes? And they'll be going, oh, my God, I don't want people saying that about me. And we're putting them in anxiety mode by asking the different question. Whereas if we say to them something about, you know, how do you think it will feel to wear two different shoes today? How would they feel? And they might go, yeah, I don't feel very good about that. I'll change them. And so how we phrase the questions helps them. And this is where coming back to denial helps them to look at, assess the situation, react in their own emotional way to the way the question was asked, and make an inspired decision on whether or not to go ahead and wear two different shoes to school, or whether or not to change them. And then whether or not they go with the left one or the right one. Which one are they going to change, by the way? So it's all about how, as parents, we can help them move out of that denial phase in terms of, you know, if we go to them and say, oh, you've got the wrong shoes on, change them. They might go, no, I'm fine with these. I don't want to change them. And they go into, when you go into a dominant mode, and again, I've talked about this in a previous podcast. I'll find which one and link it. When we talk about going into a dominant parenting mode out of neutral, so we've got neutral parent-child mode. And when we move into the parenting mode, it naturally moves them into child. Now, in adult terms, that's somebody moving into dominant mode instead of equal. So instead of talking to someone like an equal, the minute we move into dominant mode, it moves them into the lower mode, the victim mode, or the child mode. And it changes the narrative a little bit depending on the circumstances. And so moving our energy up moves theirs down. And that's where people fall into denial mode. What we need to be doing is talking to them as equal or lifting them up to make their own inspired decisions in their own dominant mode and their own abilities, empowering them. And that's what we mean by empowering is, even if it is having a bit of fun, but not in a mocking way, not in a mocking way. It could be having fun, like, wow, I really like the 2 different shoes today, and actually complimenting it. Right. And then they might go, oh, I didn't realize I'd got them on 2 different shoes. I'll change one of them. Right. Or they might change both of them and then still end up with the opposite different shoes. That's going to happen with some child somewhere, someday. It always does. But without mocking them, it's more about the communication style. The shoes are merely the example. And whatever it is, right through to exam choices, choices of friends, the choices of music, what books they're reading, what food they eat, everything that they do every day is based on an empowerment in making their own decisions. Now, when they make those decisions and they've made decisions that are not serving them best, like 2 odd shoes, then it's giving them that narrative to reassess and make a new decision in a better direction. And so this is what I mean about denial. When we approach anything they are dealing with in that parenting dominant energy, we're not talking to them equally in a safe space. And that is another topic I talk a lot about, is safe space for talking. Because if we don't offer them that safe space, if they don't, anybody who doesn't feel safe retreats, right, or attacks. So if any human or any animal or any creature on earth does not feel emotionally safe, then in a moment of feeling unsafe, we either attack or we retreat. Now, it could be that you do this and your child has an outburst and a meltdown. And that in itself is a form of denial. And this is where the emotional dysregulation comes from for children who are neurodivergent or less emotionally stable or aware, and those that are perhaps carrying some form of trauma as well, whether it's through breakup or other abuse, whatever's caused it, whether it's from school bullying. And so we don't want to be triggering that. We want to be giving them this empowerment to build resilience, to make their own choices, and to feel like they are supported and nurtured, not ordered, controlled, manipulated, and pushed. And so that safe space is really important. And this is all part of it. And again, there is a course on my website, and my courseware is being updated soon. So if you cannot get on it now, tag this and come back to it in about 6 weeks, maybe sooner. I'll let you know on next week's podcast. But I am updating all my courseware, so it's going to be much smoother to get on and follow through the courses, and much easier to access them, more interactive to follow through as well. Going to be great. I'm looking forward to this big project I'm working on in the background, transferring all of the data across from my current courses. And with a new courseware, I'm going to be inspired to do more courses too, because it's going to be so much easier. Honestly, mentally putting those courses up last year was draining, which was why I ended up not putting up the rest of the courses I had planned. But now it will empower me to do that, because I will feel more supported and less drained by the new software. So it is relevant to our emotions in every way. So that is one of the ways I would recommend helping teenagers, young adults, children, and even ourselves out of that denial mode, is acknowledging what we see as the issue, raising awareness of it, but without mockery, without judgment, right? Without going into dominant parent mode. So without ordering, without manipulating or controlling, but by merely bringing acknowledgement to it, maybe even complimenting it if it's appropriate, and asking them a question in a way that it empowers them to make a better choice. And when we can practice as parents doing this over small things, like a pair of shoes, it also becomes easier when it comes to bigger things, like they are in a relationship and you may not be particularly happy with their choice of relationship. Well, again, telling them that you're going to ban them from seeing that person and they're no good for them is going to put them in denial. And they're going to end up seeing that person in secret behind your back instead. And now, if this is a girl and you don't want them seeing a particular boy, and you go into the dominant mode and you're telling them, I ban you from seeing them, right? Here's the possibilities. A, she's going to see him behind your back anyway. B, she could end up getting pregnant. C, she could end up running away from home because she feels safer there than with you, even though your intention is from a place of love and caring, of wanting to keep her safe from that boy. Now, we all know the story about Romeo and Juliet, in that the parents both denied them from seeing the other. And what happened? We ended up with a situation with a double suicide. And I'm amazed that they still teach that. I really do, in literacy. And that is almost, it's fantasizing that whole concept of being together regardless of what parents say, to a point that it ends up with a double suicide. And being taught in literacy, we also need to teach and inspire and help teenagers and young adults to understand other ways that if they find themselves in that situation today, because it goes on every day for thousands and thousands of teenagers, if not millions, is inspiring them to find new ways to cope with that situation, not running away from home necessarily, but actually saying, no, I'm making my choice for all the right reasons. And if not, then that's my decision. But I would like to, for them, they'd like to feel like they can learn that lesson their way, but with your support, not have to go and learn it behind your back without support. And then there's things like STDs, get encouraged into smoking, drinking, drugs. So we're bringing this into the modern world now. A young girl, and this could go both ways, but a young girl getting involved with a lad, and the parents are going, no, I forbid you from seeing them, and I don't agree with that. She's going to do it behind your back anyway if you're not careful. I mean, I'm not saying they are, but those feelings that you have are, as a parent, your feelings, not hers. And that's a tough one to swallow. It is a tough one to think, I want to protect my daughter, right? I want to protect my daughter from that person. I don't want my daughter out going and doing this, that, and the other thing that they get up to when you're not watching. So you think by stopping them doing that, you do that by banning them from seeing each other, by forbidding, by being angry and dominant and parenting. Let's think back to when you were a teenager. How would you have reacted if your parents had been dominant and overbearing and powerful and forbid you from doing something? What effect would that have had on your emotions? And then next time you wanted to do something, would you have trusted your parents enough to tell them? If you wanted to start dating somebody else, would you have even told them? Or would you have kept it a secret from them? Because that's the other one. They will keep future relationships a secret. And again, that then completely disempowers you from protecting them at all. And we don't want that. What would be perfect in an ideal world is that whatever your teenager or young adult is going through, that whatever emotional lessons they are learning along the way, they always want to feel like the person they feel they can turn to in any time of need is their parents. And that means that needs to be a space where they feel emotionally safe no matter what. And as parents, that is extremely difficult to offer if it's something you're not used to. And for many, many, many parents out there now, this is something we were not offered by our parents. I wasn't given that emotional safety. to feel like I could talk to my parents without being shouted at, shamed, or blamed. Now, sometimes, yes, but sometimes not. So for my parents, it was a bit of a balance. There were times when they accepted things and listened, but then they still got angry in their own way over different things. But they may not get angry with that thing. They may have actually offered a safe space for listening that time, but the next time I wanted to do something, they felt like I might be at risk and get angry over something else. And this is, as parents, how easy it is to do this. And I've been super careful not to do that with my own children. Like whatever they are going through, I've always made an effort to say to them, okay, I can see this happening. How are you feeling about it? What other options do you think could happen if you continue this way? What could happen if you make these alternative choices? Right? And to help them understand that I've given them that awareness in both directions, whether they continue the route they're on or whether they take an alternative route. I've made them aware of the consequences both ways and the potential both ways, and said, are you still happy with the choice you're making now? And I just want to be sure they are happy so I can be happy for them. But also to say that if at any point that changes and they're not happy, that they still feel safe in coming back to talk to me. And sometimes we cannot avoid them going through some of the biggest traumas when they still make those choices. Because if we dominate and order and dictate to them, we just replace that trauma with our own trauma that we're imposing on them. And that's not healthy either. So them knowing that when they recognize enough that they are lost and this is not where they want to be going, that's when they go, mum, dad, whoever, I need help. Please help me. I need to make a change. I need to do something different. And that's when we sit down and have a heart to heart and a talk. And again, I open up that safe space on a bigger scale and we sit and have a genuinely open conversation about all the possibilities yet again. And it's a repetitive process for life. It's not a case of sit down once and say to them, here's what's going to happen. How would you like it if somebody sat down to you and for your life said, here's what's going to happen. Here's what you are going to do. Here's how you are going to behave and how you are going to socialize with. And here's the job you are going to do and the topics you are going to study at school. Right? That takes away the autonomy entirely. You are then no longer living your own life. You are living somebody else's. And so from there, what I want to do is now bring that out to parents to now think about your part in your child's life and recognize where you're in denial. And this is not a bad thing, right? This is not a bad thing about being lost. And if nobody tells you you are lost, or if nobody tells you, do you know what, actually, here's the route you're going, and you're going down that route fine. And do you know what? You can carry on that route fine for the rest of your life. But the journey you are taking will be the outcome you get at the end of it because it's the choice you're making. But if nobody says to you, by the way, did you know that if you take that route, the scenery is different, it's shorter, you meet different people, there's better pubs en route or whatever it is, right? If nobody tells you the alternative route, you don't have a choice. So really, this bit at the moment is less about denial, as about awareness. And me saying to you, whatever route you are going on with your parenting skills right now, are you aware there is another route? Another way we can make this happen, where there is growth, there is engagement, there is trust and bonding with your teenagers and your young adults, where there's a better future for them, where there's laughter, smiles, happiness, family times, right? And honestly, some of the most amazing conversations you can have with your children. Because instead of me talking to my children in a way of, I don't agree with that and you shouldn't do that, and then there's resistance coming back from them, I have incredible conversations with my children about all kinds of things and my grandchildren by taking a different route and creating a different pattern in the way I communicate with them. And it's changed not only their life, but my life without adding additional trauma onto what they're going through. Now, for a long time, my son was going through a lot of depression. He was very, very lost. And he was in a very deep, dark place, even by the time he was about 20. And I didn't know the alternative route. I mean, I kind of knew there was an alternative route, and I know he needed a different route for sure. But that was his journey, not mine. And that's the thing. Although we are all here on the same world, we're all walking different journeys. We don't all have our feet in the same footprints at the same time. Even if somebody is walking beside me, their journey is parallel to mine. It's not mine. And that's how my children's journey is. It's parallel to mine. They are still on a slightly different journey and a different route. And like when children are young and you're walking down the road or down the country lane and they're running off and doing everything and they're jumping over trees and exploring everything, right? Your journey from A to B is still different from their journey to A to B, even though you leave A together and arrive at B together. The journey in the middle is different for both of you because of the way you are walking and stepping and just slightly different choices. It's still the same journey, but it's parallel and it's different. So there is a lot of analogies I'm bringing in here about journeys, and I do see everything emotional that we go through in life as being parallel to something I can describe physically. And it seems to be a skill that I have developed in raising my children, is to be able to relate the invisible to the visible, to be able to use analogies to create really seeable outcomes and concepts for everything we do. And this is what I teach through my emotional awareness strategies too. So when we're talking about those parenting skills, coming back there, because we just detour through the woods and over some trees and come back to the path again. This is me going off at tangents, but it all comes back to path. Is as parents, once we're aware that there are different choices to make, and we choose to still keep going down the original path, and it's the path that's serving us least effectively, and we go, no, it's fine. I'm on the path that works for me. But then that's fine. If you're taking that path and you're happy with that, that's fine. And you go, no, I'm actually quite comfortable on this route. That's okay. There is no right or wrong. However, if you are still taking that path and say, no, this is the way I'm going and I'm sticking with it, but en route, you are still acting in victim mode. You are still complaining about everything. You're still saying nothing's fixed. My teenager's not changing. They're not improving. I'm not feeling any better. I just wish everything would solve, right? If you're going through all that negative narrative while sticking to the original path, when there is now the awareness of a new way of doing things, then that is being in denial, right? So when somebody has said to you, there is a better way to do something, and you go, no, I don't want to do that, but you're still complaining about the way things are, that is denial. And so from here, that's where I want to say, if you find yourself in that situation and you are at the point where, if you go back and watch the one last week about feeling lost, you feel lost and you're going, do you know what? I want to get out of denial. And I want to change the way I do things. I want to change the way my teenager feels and thinks, and I want to rebuild trust. And I want that journey with my teenagers and young adults and my family, where there is scenery and flowers and laughter and smiles and family meals where we're all happy. If that is what you want, get in touch with me. Get in touch and let's do an interview with you about what I can do to support you on your journey in the other direction, on the other path. As emotional awareness expert or an emotional awareness expert, I have studied this so much over the last 9 years. And so for me, this is my book, Brain Unchained. If you haven't watched my podcast before, this is my very well-worn working version that I use on screen. I've done for a few years now. And this is the emotional cycle diagram that I used to help my son see his emotions when I realized he was a visual learner and couldn't understand his emotions because he couldn't see them. And so this helped him to realize that whatever journey he's taking on life, he needed to know, like being lost last week, where he was. Was he down here in grief, over here in aggression, in depression? Was he just feeling sad, angry? So first of all, we needed to know where emotionally he was. Secondly, emotionally, where he wanted to be. Did he want to be sitting calm and thoughtful, or over here motivated, or excited and happy? And we need to know both to know where you want to journey between. Every journey has to have a point A and a point B. How we get there in between is a choice. But first of all, it's recognizing the journey itself and the planning or the acceptance of how that journey takes place. Sometimes we plan a journey, right? I'm here, I've got to go there, and I've got to be there at a certain time, and I've got to do it a certain route. And other times we go on a mystery tour. Okay, I'm starting here. I want to end up in XYZ place. But how we get there, we can take the scenic route. And it's a choice. Neither is right, neither is wrong. It's a choice. And as parents, I want to empower you with the choice in the journey you take with your teenagers and young adults. I also want to empower therapists. And now here's the next part I want to talk about is therapy. There is an element of this where I see a lot of parents, or I talk to a parent and say, I support parents in the journey of supporting their teenagers and young adults. And they go, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I just want you to fix my teenager, or I just want you to fix my child, or want you to go and help my young adult because they're not going to listen to me. And the heckles kind of go up and the denial kicks in. And I'm saying, here's a way for you as a parent to do this, to support your own teenager or young adult, because it is you offering that support that builds that trust with you, that builds the empathy between you and them, that creates a stronger relationship between you and them. But it begins with change in you. And if you're in denial with that, then it's great that you can send them to therapy. And I am going to be training therapists to use my modality in their therapy rooms. I am already in discussions with therapists and life coaches, hypnotherapists, counselors, because there are a lot of parents out there who will not help their own teenager or young adult and will send them to a therapist. And even therapists are finding some teenagers with such trauma, and young adults with such trauma, and even adults, you know what, people, let's just say people, that therapists are finding people of all ages with trauma so deep that it's taking them weeks because they're so numbed and shut down from their emotions and don't know how to describe them, that it's taking them a very long time to open up and actually have the right conversation with the therapist about their emotions, so the therapist can help them process their emotions. Now, when this is through the NHS and talking therapies, we get like 6 sessions, if we're lucky, 10. And for somebody who's only just beginning to open up and trust that person enough or understand enough to talk about their emotions, by the end of those 6 to 10 sessions, that's not particularly helpful. So even as a parent, if your child, and I say child loosely as in all ages up to 20s, 30s more, if they need therapy and it's going to take them all of that time to open up, it's not serving them well. And the result is they then go, oh, therapy doesn't work. And then they go into denial about having more therapy. So again, as a parent, what if you had the power to have conversations with your family so that they could begin to talk about their core emotions in a way that they understand them, in a way that they understand they're a map and there is a place to start and a place they want to be. And then go, actually, so I am feeling like this, but about a particular topic. Now, that may not be something you know how to resolve with them, but at least they are talking about it. And now they might go, actually, I do need to talk to the right person about it. And that empowers them to go to therapy with a purpose for talking to somebody for the right reasons, to be able to express their emotions from the outcome and actually work through those sessions with an outcome that they want at the end of it around a specific topic or trauma that they need to process those emotions for. And now therapy for them is suddenly helpful, not something they're in denial about. And again, this is something that has happened with me, with family members, not just my son, but with other family too, where they've wanted to shut down and go into denial and shy away from that therapy, saying that's not going to help. And I've been able to go through this process, and with other clients and friends and family as well. I've been able to go through this process with so many people where they then go, now I understand why I need to go for therapy and what I need to talk about. Now, as a parent, that is powerful. It is amazing to then, instead of putting a family member, a child, a teenager, a young adult into denial by saying, oh, you've got a problem and you need to go to therapy, very much like saying, you've got the wrong shoes on, you need to change one before you go to school or work, right? It's the same kind of mentality that we bring to the conversation that makes a difference, a new route, a new journey, a new path, right? More openness, more engagement, more trust and more bonding between you and them, even though they may still need to go for the therapy. And this is what I'm getting at with coming out of that denial is not about shame or blame or guilt, right? Or judgment. Because for me, this is a safe space to sit and learn. There is no blame, shame, guilt, or judgment in anything you've done up till now. For me, it is me seeing so many parents out there that are lost. And I also see so many teenagers and young adults out there who are lost because the parents are lost. Now, the teenagers are in denial, but if the parents are in denial too, I see where they both need the awareness of a new route. And that is the power of emotional awareness for me, how I want to help you. So let me know if this has inspired you today to think differently. I would love your feedback. I would love to know how this has helped you address any narrative that you use now, or if you've got any questions about the way that you have conversations with your teenager or young adult. If you want to come and join me on my Facebook group or my Facebook page, follow the links. They're in the channel description. There's a list of links, so go and find them in there. And come and connect with me on social media as well as here on YouTube. So I really want to help you find the happier path. I want to help your teenagers to find their place, their value, their purpose in life. And I would love to see all of you building stronger bonds. Now, if you're thinking, well, it's too late, my teenagers like 18, 19, 20, or actually even in their 30s, and you think it's too late, it is never too late. There is still an opportunity to do this, and it might need some more one-to-one support from me at this stage. It might not. It might be just enough for you to join, on one of my workshops that are upcoming. I will also have a link somewhere around the video around Eventbrite. I have a list of workshops on there that I will be offering. So whenever you watch this, whenever the list is available, what is upcoming for you at the time. But as I'm recording this, I'm running a series of workshops for the introduction to the core emotional cycle At the moment, I'm running them once a fortnight, and later down the line, this might lessen to maybe once a month or something. But I want people to come on. I would love for you to come on and really get to grips with this with me. I also offer a complete year-long mentoring program for somebody who wants to take this to the full level. So if you've got half a dozen children who are all just coming into their teens, and you know that these lessons are going to serve you for many, many years to come, for all of the teenage years you're going to have to go through with them, and you want to learn all of this over the space of a year with one meeting a week, come and talk to me, book an appointment with me through the calendar on my website, because I'm here and I really want to help you. I have so much to share and so much to give and so much change that I know I can offer you when you are ready to say, do you know what? I'm ready to make that change. Okay, we want your help. I'm here for you. It's down to you making that decision. And I'm looking forward to hearing from anybody who wants to. So if not, there is the courses on my website. There's definitely there's going to be the free introduction to the emotional cycle diagram. And again, at the moment, that's a registered version. But if you switch over to the new one in a few weeks after recording this, there'll be a little bit further down the line, the new version, which will not be registered for that one. And when you take that one, there will be a voucher at the end for more courses, a discount off other courses. So that's to look out for on the new one. More to come on that. But thank you for watching today. I think this is still recording. I hope it's recording. And I will see you all again next week for another topic on Parenting Teens podcast. And today, I would love to know how many of you are now willing to recognize feeling lost, acknowledge the denial, and are ready to embrace change. See you all next week.